Hi, everybody. It's Jennifer from Pathway Dental Solutions. We are back for another Toolbox Tuesday. If you have not been with us before, every Tuesday in our practices is called Toolbox Tuesday. And that is the day where all of our team gathers together. We pick one of the topics of the hundreds of resources that we have available for them at this point and make sure that everybody is on the same page with that resource. Of course, when we have so many resources available, it can be tough to keep track of them all sometimes. And we want to make sure that we're reinforcing that message with our team. So this week has been by request. We've talked about this on other podcasts as well, and this definitely seems to be a hot take topic that a lot of you are struggling with, whether that is with your team or with your doctors, and that is gaslighting in the workplace. So we heard this term, this is kind of something that's out on social media a lot about gaslighting. You have family members who are gaslighting you, but like, what does gaslighting actually mean in a practice setting? So that's what we're going to break down for you today, because the harsh reality of it is that you probably have a gaslighter in your practice right now. You might even be gaslit currently and not even realize it. So first and foremost, we're going to get into how do you recognize gaslighting in the workplace. So we have an entire resource and cheat sheet around this. This is just a screenshot of what we have available that is in our emotional intelligence series, which is part of our coaching program. So if that's something that you are interested in, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to connect with you to find out how we might be able to help your practice with some of these emotional intelligence skills and tips and tricks and resources. These have all been built from situations that we have had in our own practices that we have had to address over the years, and we're wanting to share that information with others. Our emotional intelligence series is the one that we are constantly adding lessons to, and that's the one that changes the most, again, as these situations come up. And my favorite part that I've heard back from our team feedback on this particular module that we have is that it's not only helped them in the work environment, but in their personal relationships and lives as well. So hopefully that can do the same for you. But overarching, what does gaslighting look like? So gaslighting a lot of times will look like someone is trying to change what the reality of the situation is. That's where kind of the term, like you have this whole dust cloud, this smoke cloud that's happening. That's where that term came from, is because they tend to redirect whatever the situation is. And instead of look at me, hey, look at this little fire that's going on over there. Let's create something else out of nothing that may or may not be the case. And all of a sudden you're having this conversation with them and you're questioning your own reality, or all of a sudden you went to that person because you wanted to talk about a problem that they were having with case acceptance, and now all of a sudden you're talking about the issues that they have with an assistant, and you leave that conversation and go, wait, that was not what the intention of the conversation was. How did we get so far off track? So a couple of gaslighting behaviors to be on the lookout for. Someone who deflects blame. It's always everybody else's fault. They're always a victim in the situation. This happened to them. Patients did this to them. Team members did XYZ to them. It's never anybody else's fault. When you're talking with them, you end up talking around in circles, or there's a lot of confusion that is being created in the conversation. Again, you start with the conversation wanting to accomplish X, and you go way far down another rabbit hole to Narnia and end of the conversation going, what just happened and what are we actually talking about now? Shifting topics. This is a smoke and mirrors technique where, again, they can be jumping around or bringing up a lot of past things. Like, hey, we're talking about, I'm using the example of case acceptance. And then all of a sudden they'll bring up, well, I had that really great case. And remember that aesthetic case that I did way back in January? And all of a sudden they start talking about the clinical plans from a case that happened 7 months ago. And again, after the conversation, you're going, wait, that's not where the focus was. We're talking about the here and now, what's actually happening here and now. Now, the difficult part with gaslighting is that a lot of times these are going to be your high performers who are the most likely to display some of these characteristics. So these are going to be your doctors. These are going to be your leadership team members. These are going to be your office managers, maybe your hygienists. They are people of power in your organization, which makes it all the more crucial to try to temper these gaslighting tendencies, but to also recognize they're going to be with some of your stronger personality types. And part of it is just those stronger personality types are usually the people who are higher performers. They're very type A. They want to be perfectionists. They have to be very driven. Dental school is tough, to get through dental school and to have the stick-to-itiveness to get all the way through that process. Then you're working in a practice, seeing patients. You have to be a little bit of a rugged individualist to be able to survive all of that. So it's not that all of those things are bad, but just like with everything else, with positive personality traits come some less desirable personality traits that we will all have to continue to handle throughout our careers. The biggest takeaway for us with gaslighting has been recognizing that this is not a one and done situation. Even if you fire that one gaslighter that you have right now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have another gaslighter 5 years from now. And you can't just fire everyone who has, I mean, maybe you can, but we have not been in a situation where we can just fire every person who has in air quotes, less than desirable personality trait. We will be looking at ourselves in the mirror too, going, well, maybe we shouldn't be running this business at all because we have some of these tendencies as well. It's the same when you have your first psychology course in college and all of a sudden you're diagnosing yourself and all of your family members with all of the things that you need to work on. So again, these are going to be your top performers. These are going to be the people who have influence over each other and others in your organization and can drive results for you. Again, these are the people who can drive results. So it's not all bad, but they may not even be aware that they're doing this, some of these things. So that's where the leadership part of it comes in, to kind of make them aware and to have, again, some of these air quote tough conversations. We talk about this with our team and with patients as well. Not every conversation has to be a confrontation. However, if you do have stronger personality types and you don't enjoy conflict, which most of us don't, and a lot of us have stronger personality types in our organizations, it can be intimidating to go to that person and you know that they're going to get defensive on you or they're not going to be super happy with the feedback that you have to give them. You're not going to just come out and say, you're gaslighting all of the team. That's not going to go well. You know it's not going to go well. So how can you communicate some of these things to make them aware of what it is that they're doing and also make them aware that you know what it is that they're doing and you are not going to continue down that rabbit hole with them. That also has been a game changer for us when it's like, hey, you're not going to get away with this behavior. We see what's happening here. So let's actually have a conversation like adults because we're not going to go down that rabbit hole to Narnia. So gaslighting in your practice and leadership, what does this look like? This can be intentional. This can be unintentional. Again, unless you have someone who's just evil in your practice, you have them in your practice for a reason, right? You hired that doctor, you hired that office manager, that hygienist, whoever that person is, because you saw potential in them, because they could drive results, because they do have that charismatic personality that you're looking for that can go over very well with patients. It's not all bad. You know that they're going to be driven with goals and their personal income goals and that they can be very successful for you. So they may be doing it unintentionally. That again is where the leadership aspect of this comes in to make them aware. So whether it's intentional, whether it's not, if you have someone who is distorting facts, avoiding accountability, constantly blaming other people, undermining other people, you have to bring it to their attention. Doctors are at the top of the hierarchy in a practice. That is just the way that it goes. They have the education behind them and they need to have the respect that they have earned. That being said, that does not give them the right in our practices to treat the rest of the team members like garbage just because they're a doctor. You 100% need your team behind you to be able to be successful. So if that's what they're doing and they're constantly undermining the team, that's a toxic personality trait that will just absolutely tank your culture. That's how doctors get the reputation of just being jerks, right? To just be completely honest, that's where it goes down a very bad rabbit hole. Now, what we see a lot of times more often than not is it's not even so much that they're just treating the team members like garbage, but they absolutely will undermine, especially the team members who are in a position of leadership or in a position of a little bit of authority, because hey, those team members might actually be challenging some of what this doctor is saying and they don't like that. So then they can undermine them. Again, a little bit of deflection here or whatnot, because they see that person as a threat, which again can just be so damaging to your culture. You need those team members who are going to care about your practice like it's their own, and the doctors and the leadership team absolutely have to be on the same page. So a lot of this can come out if you have a situation where they have to be high performing, they're under stress, they're trying to meet their goals, things are going on in the practice, that can just amplify that behavior all the more and make it all the more likely that they're going to turn into these gaslighting situations and conversations. So we talked about what this looks like as far as, shifting the topics about creating confusion, about deflecting blame. And just to give you another case study example, I gave the example of case acceptance. This can also be as simple as, hey, you were running behind today, Dr. XYZ, right? You were running behind today. Running on time is one of our core values. We talk about it a ton, and how every person plays a role in ensuring that we're running an on-time schedule. For a gaslighter, for a doctor who is worried about you questioning their clinical skills, that will become everybody else's fault. Well, the assistants didn't bring the patient back in time. The patient had to stop to go to the bathroom 4 times. The scanner wasn't working. I ran out of water. All of those things may be true, but at the end of the day, that doctor is in control of that production appointment, and they are in control of the clinical care. All of those things may be true, but that doesn't explain why it took your prep a half an hour to be done when that prep should have been done in 15 minutes, right? Because you were messing around with things, or because you got flustered, or because you're going to try to make it worse than it was. Those are some of the situations that come up. So common tendencies that you can pick up, even if you don't have someone that you feel like is gaslighting you or your team right off the bat, just be aware that these are some of the tendencies that they might have. Again, they can be very charismatic and persuasive people, which can work great when they're talking with patients and doing exams and treatment planning. They're super self-protective. They have a strong focus on themselves, maintaining control and their reputation. Again, this can be a positive thing. You want a doctor who cares about their reputation in your community. You don't want someone who's just going to come in and be a hack, and they don't care if there's a ton of 1-star reviews that are coming down the pike. So again, that can be a positive thing, but it can also work against you. They like to maintain dominance in the conversations, right? There's a lot of us that fight for attention in airspace. I talk about this on our meetings all the time, that I'm going to start passing around a ball so that we know who has the baton right now to be able to speak, so we're not all talking over each other. But they like to make sure that they have the last word and they're maintaining control. They have influence over others. Again, this is a person that's usually in a leadership role. If they're able to induce feelings of doubt and guilt, or an exaggerated sense of responsibility, it takes that pressure off of them. Talked about before, these are going to be your people that are of the highest of the food chain in your practices, so beware. Now, what is the root of this? Most of the time in our experience, and what we have seen with gaslighters in our practice, is it comes from fear and imposter syndrome. They're worried that they are going to be found out. Again, I'm saying in air quotes, that they may not be as good as they would like us to believe that they are. That can be from a clinical standpoint, that can be communication with your team, that can be patient relations, leadership skills, all of the above. And they're trying to keep you out from finding out the truth of the situation. So this is why they need to be right. They don't want to be found out. They have an instinct to control the narrative so that you aren't really getting a peek under the tent to see what's going on. And they don't like to be vulnerable. Now, none of us really like to be vulnerable, right? None of us are really, please just pick me apart. But there's a difference between being open to feedback and someone that's just avoiding it at all costs because they're so afraid of what that feedback might be and what their response to it should be. So the money question is, what the heck do we do about it? Because we have to handle it, right? And you also don't want to have these doctors or your office managers or your leadership team displaying this behavior that not only is damaging to your team, but to other team members who are working their way up the ranks to see that as the behavior that you're accepting as acceptable from your leadership team. They're going to mirror that behavior from those that are setting the example for them. So you don't want to just keep perpetuating this, and you're just going to have this huge dust cloud that you have to try to manage through. So what do we do in our practices? Now, I've been talking about this on our social media accounts. And again, it's kind of a hot take topic that seems to have set a lot of people off, like, how can you do that? So I want to explain and elaborate a little bit further, because one of the things that I said is you say that, again, in air quotes, say the stupid thing back to them. Now, I am not saying that your doctors are stupid. I am not saying that your office managers are stupid, nor am I suggesting that you go to them and claim that they are, right? But their perception is their reality. That does not mean that is the 100% reality of the situation. right? The game of telephone. If you've ever played the game of telephone, you start with one statement and you go around the circle and each person repeats the statement. How often is that statement different by the time you get all the way around the circle? Just because no one is trying to sabotage anyone, but one person hears something different than another person hears something. So unless you were in that room with that patient, with that team member on that phone call, you do not know with 100% certainty if what is being told to you are the 100% facts of that situation. You're in it second. So in that situation, yes, that might be that doctor's reality, but saying it back to them sometimes can also be a little bit of a check for them of, oh, how I'm coming off is not the way that I intended to come off. Or, oh, maybe that's not what the situation actually is. We have this come up with assistants all the time. We have this come up with doctors having issues with other doctors all the time where we have used this exact example. So to give you a case study, I have a doctor come to me and say they had a problem with a case that another doctor did. It needs to be done under warranty or whatever the situation is with the other doctor. Okay, great. In our practices, if a doctor has a failure, the treating doctor is the one that takes care of it. If there's some reason why the treating doctor can't take care of it, then those doctors need to work it out amongst themselves from a production standpoint and reimbursement standpoint and what have you. So it's hard when any doctor finds something from another doctor. No doctor wants a doctor to come to them and say, oh, I found an open margin on your crown, right? That's not a fun day for anybody. But had the situation come up, doctor says, oh, I went to Dr. whoever, she blew me off. She didn't want to hear that there was a problem with her crown. So in that situation, I said those exact words back. So Dr. X blew you off. Dr. X didn't want to hear that there was a problem with the crown. And just let that sit for a second. Well, I didn't get a response to the Slack. Okay. Is it possible that that doctor was with another patient? Is that possible that, hey, just she's going to get to you at the end of the day after she has a chance, to read the information or look at the patient's chart? Let's not just assume because you didn't get an automatic response that she's blowing you off and she doesn't care about that patient, right? And again, just putting it back in that perspective of, okay, that's not what I meant, or that's not what actually happened. And part of it, again, you have to find out the facts before you just have an emotional reaction and then go jump down another doctor's throat that she doesn't care about the patient and she's not responding when that may not be the situation that's happening at all. Have a similar situation with assistants. This assistant never sets up the room for me properly. Everything is always missing. I'm always running behind when I work with that assistant. You're always running behind when you work with that assistant. This is the first time that we're hearing about that. How long has that been going on? That assistant is always missing something for you for every single appointment that you have. I haven't heard that from other doctors. So again, how long has that been going on? You want to make sure that we're very crystal clear, especially if there's another person involved, because otherwise I'm going to that assistant jumping down their throat when it might have just been a bad appointment. Right? Or, hey, sometimes it's a tough clinical case and that doctor's exhausted. And yeah, that assistant missed having XYZ set up. So it made that case even harder. But that doesn't mean it's a sweeping generalization that we need to fire that assistant now because XYZ happened, when in actuality, then hey, it was just a tough clinical case. Reminding, I'm using doctors as an example right now just because it seems to come up the most with doctors first and foremost, but reminding your doctors that you have the same goals, right? It drives me bananas when I hear from our doctors or from our team, well, we're on opposite sides. No, we're not on opposite sides here. This is not Red Rover, and come over team or come over our leadership team or come over doctors. We are all rowing in the same direction. We might have different ideas of how we're going to get there, but if we're not rowing in the same direction, this is not the right fit. In our practices, our doctors set income goals for themselves. We have them set them every year. And then we plan out the next year according to that with the number of vacation days that they want, working days that they want. We extrapolate that out to how much production per day they need to produce to hit their individual income goals. So if I have a doctor come to me and say, well, I'm not hitting goal and now we're not aligned, time out, because I'm also invested in you hitting goal as well. So now we're looking at everything. We're looking at exams and case acceptance and efficiency and how many appointments are you not finishing what you scheduled for, and down the line it goes. Don't tell me now it's my fault that you're not hitting goal. I'm not saying that it's any one thing or any one person's fault, but we are all invested in the same goals here. Ask questions, do not make accusations. This one is a tough one because sometimes if you have a gaslighter and you're aware you've kind of gone through this process and you've picked up some of these personality traits, you're aware that they're a gaslighter, it can be very hard to not automatically be defensive, because you know it's about to go down and you want to have every response under the sun. However, if you start to make accusations against them, they're going to shut down. It will happen, bar none. They're already going to be defensive. They're already going to be on edge. That is not the way to get the results that you want. Again, this may not be the way you want this conversation to go, but you want to remember the results that you want from them. So ask those questions. It's kind of the same with saying the stupid thing back to them. So how long has that been going on? Or make them state it. If they're going to flat out lie about a situation, make them say it, or make them send it in a message to you, because then they have to stand by it, right? Then it's black and white. This is what you said. We're here to help you fix it, but we're not going to help you fix something that is just an emotional reaction. And then model the behavior you want. The other tendency that I see that is, again, really hard with this is to not do the same tendencies that they're doing, to not create a dust cloud of your own and all of a sudden bring up all the things from the past with this person, or all of a sudden you're going off on a tangent with the topic about this, that, and the other thing, or, well, you've had this problem with this doctor for the last 3 years, and go through the whole history. When you start those conversations, remember of what the goal of that conversation is and what you, as the business owner or the leader in the practice, what you need to get out of it, however you get there, right? It's not about being right, it's about being effective. And so if you need something from them and you need them to have a realization, stay focused on that and not everything that has happened in the past. Very difficult to do, but it's the only way, especially with these personality types. So just a reminder of a couple of strategies that we've employed. Stay fact-based. I know I'm beating a dead horse talking about that, but make sure you have the facts of the situation. Sometimes you might even need to have them repeat it to you 2 or 3 times. If you notice with some of these people, it changes just a little bit, or they're just ambiguous enough that you're starting to question, okay, wait, what are we actually talking about here, right? With the assistant example that I used. Well, it's not every appointment. Okay, so how many appointments are we talking about? Quantify what it is that they're talking about. It's not a feeling that sometimes they're good or sometimes they're bad. Saying that an employee is good or bad is a feeling. The weather could be good or bad today, right? That's not, are they driving results for our team? Reflect it back. Say it back to them. I even have, not for gaslighting situations, but I even have my assistants who do this with our doctors during exams. The doctors will prompt them to say it back to me to make sure that we're hearing the same thing, so that if a doctor did an exam and they've laid out priorities of treatment, that assistant is not saying, yes, doctor, I'm good, and then they run out of the room as soon as the doctor leaves and they don't know what the treatment priorities are. Say it back to me. Make sure that we're very clear. Avoid an emotional escalation. That is not going to help you. That is not going to help them. If it's going too far down a rabbit hole and you have someone that just gets extremely huffy about this, then just call a timeout on the conversation. I use that all the time. And people get very frustrated when I say I'm calling a timeout. They're like, what are we in kindergarten? What I want to say, that I do not, but what I want to say in that situation is, I feel like I'm in kindergarten because you are having an adult temper tantrum right now. That's a thought going on in my head that I do not say. But I reserve the right to call a timeout for a conversation. What I do say is, this is not productive any longer. Let's find another time to chat after we've both had time to process this. And then we're done. You do not have to continue engaging in a conversation that you know is not going to be. Limit deflection. Do not go to Narnia. Again, you have the goal of the conversation. You're staying in the here and now with that topic. In our practices, we are very open to communication. We have workshops with our team. We have huddles. We have workshops with our doctors. We have doctor forum. We have clinical calibration. We have all of the resources available, which we can also help you set up for your practices. Having the doctors have an out and a way to communicate is not something that we're lacking in our practices. We know that, so we don't need to have all of the balls in the air. They've had ample opportunity to talk about all of those things. And again, a lot of times that ends up resulting in people bringing up things from the past that are not relevant to what the current situation is. Documenting conversations. I hope that you're not in a situation where, this is going to lead to termination for someone. I hope some of these tips and tricks can help you kind of bridge that gap and just help with communications. Because again, most of the time, these people are not bad people. They don't know what they don't know, and they don't know the offenses that they're really committing here. So I hope that you're not at the point that you're terminating, but if you are, we document all of our workshops and meetings that we have with everyone all week, all the time, not just when it's a negative conversation. Part of that is also just to be able to go back to, if I'm having a workshop with the doctor, be like, hey, last time we were talking about your efficiency of class twos, or whatever the situation might be. How is that going? So we can just check in and see what progress they're making. It doesn't always have to be negative. So that way, I said, we're just documenting across the board, whatever the conversation is, in case we need it for reference. But I'm hoping it's just for reference. And then you can say like, hey, last time we were talking about, some of these tendencies that you were having, or, some of the conflict that you might have had with the other doctor or your assistant. And it seems like things are going a lot better. It can also be a positive that you can reflect upon in that regard. And then overall, again, reminding yourself what the goal of this is. These are not necessarily bad people. If they are bad people, then they probably don't have a place in your practice, whether they're high producers or not. We don't need someone culturally that is going to be bad or evil. That's not going to help anybody in the long run. So if we've agreed that they're not bad people, they need a little bit of guidance. That's what we are here for as business owners, as leaders, is to help give them that guidance. Now, sometimes, again, it's a tough road to give that guidance, but that's part of what we're here for. That's part of what our role is as leaders, is to show them some of the blind spots that they may not even be aware of. So remember that you can be kind and assertive to these people. You can protect yourself and your business without becoming confrontational, and you can hold them accountable without tearing them down. No one wants to be talked down to. Again, we're peers here. Like, hey, I'm here to help you. I'm trying to make you aware of these things. I say all the time, I'm the spinach in the tooth person. If I see someone with spinach in their teeth, I'm going to tell them, because I want to know if I have spinach in my teeth in return. So I'm here to help you. I'm telling you this because I know that you can be better, and I want to try to help you get there. And then give them some tips and tricks. And that's what we have the resource available for. Like I said, that's why we have this entire module and lesson that's been built out to help people through these things. It's a tough thing. And it's a tough thing for them to have to look in the mirror and realize that they're doing it. It might be tendencies that they've had for a very long time that we're trying to help them reverse and guide into a different direction. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you have a couple of takeaways. I would love to hear about how you're implementing some of these things in your practices and some of the results that you might be seeing in turn. And if you would like to learn more about our emotional intelligence series, our doctor development program that goes through so much of these emotional intelligence lessons to help guide your doctors and really help them be full cycle producers, please feel free to connect with us. Connect at pathwaydentalsolutions.com. Would love to hear how we can help you and your team. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody next time. Hope that everybody has a great day.